A teenage thug who left his ex-teacher for dead after beating him to a pulp in a shocking unprovoked attack has failed in a desperate final attempt to evade justice. When he was just 17 years old, Lucas Micoliunas hit Christian Dawson in the face after ambushing him shortly after 2 a.m. outside the Jet Garage in Princes Avenue, Hull. On March 18, 2017, the 40-year-old teacher was left blood-soaked on the pavement after being punched several times in the head. He was concussed, blinded for 24 hours and suffered horrific facial injuries which a surgeon likened to crushed cornflakes. Micoliunas denied any involvement in the attack but was convicted of grievous bodily harm (GBH) in August 2017 following a one-day trial at Hull Youth Court. However, almost a year after the attack, Micoliunas returned to Hull Crown Court to appeal against his conviction. The teenager claimed a case of mistaken identity with his defense lawyer, Stephen Robinson. Questioning the amount of alcohol the teacher had drunk on the night in question, Mr. Dawson, who is a father of one, recognized Micoliunas from his time as a teacher at Sirius Academy West. Had 5 pints and 1 Jack Daniels and Coke during a night out with friends. He said he was tipsy and merry, but Mr. Robinson suggested he was more intoxicated than he was letting on. "I have got to suggest you were more affected by the alcohol." "Thank you, say you were. You were a bit more drunk, weren't you?" said Mr. Robinson. The victim replied, "I have never been so drunk that I can't recall the events of the evening, and certainly in this instance, where nothing like this has ever happened to me before. I have got no doubt that the memory of who it was that assaulted me is not impaired by the alcohol I drank." Mr. Dawson was answered questions about the night by Mr. Robinson, prosecutor Julia Baggs and recorder Tim Roberts QC. Mr. Robinson took aim at the accuracy of Mr. Dawson's first statement given to the police when he was still in hospital just a day after the attack. He described it as pretty inaccurate, and Mr. Dawson admitted that he did make mistakes because he was under the effect of painkillers and was still confused from the concussion he had suffered at the hands of his attacker in a final attempt to distance Micoliunas from the attack. Mr. Robinson claimed Mr. Dawson had tried to pin the blame on the teenager after being shown a picture of Micoliunas by a former colleague. When he was shown the photo and realized Micoliunas was the attacker and the person he had seen in Khan's takeaway hours prior to the attack, Mr. Dawson had immediately called police. Mr. Robinson said, "When you say the person who hit you was the same male in the takeaway, you are mistaken about that, aren't you? By this stage you were desperate to find the person who had done this, weren't you?" Mr. Dawson retorted, "I know it was the same person in the takeaway. The one thing that has remained accurate was that the person who hit me was the person in the takeaway, and I have known that all along." Recorder Roberts QC assessed the evidence given by all parties, including Mr. Dawson, a passerby who came to the teacher's aid, and Micoliunas himself. He admitted that while Mr. Dawson's process of identifying his victim through Facebook was not conventional, it was accurate and reliable to the standards needed to attain a criminal conviction. This meant Micoliunas' appeal against his conviction was not upheld. Throughout his ordeal, Mr. Dawson, who now teaches at Sirius Academy North in Orchard Park, has pleaded with his victim to show remorse. 4 months after the attack, he admitted he was still haunted by the terrifying encounter which left his young daughter too scared to look at him because of the extent of his injuries. Micoliunas is now set to be sentenced for the attack on his former teacher and for a separate burglary offense in 3 weeks' time. He was denied bail by recorder Roberts QC and will be remanded in custody until he is sentenced.
Tell me where the freak's at.